At IFF, we looked at the national costs and tried to compare from a state-to-state perspective per capita in the population. And the reason why we did that was because we wanted to also get perspective on how expansion is also impacting these costs. And what we found was that managed care really made no difference in whether or not states spent more or less money. And then looking at a couple of examples like Sellers-Dorsey, put up Nebraska and Utah as these examples, shining examples that Idaho should emulate in their managed care system if they were to implement it. And what we found is not only did their nominal total budget increase exceed that for Idaho, which is currently under the fee-for-service system, but we also saw that on that per-person cost, both states were much higher than Idaho. Yep. Particularly Nebraska, their cost per person were 16% higher than what we were seeing in Idaho. And it didn't really seem like any of the states had anything to show for it, right, when it was all said and done. And that was another thing. So how does expansion and bringing in the adult population, the able-bodied working age adults, mostly on Medicaid because of income reasons, how does that impact the whole managed care scheme?
Sure. Well, when we looked at the cost escalation in Idaho, it's clearly attributable to Medicaid expansion and then the maintenance of effort requirement that was put in as a result of the pandemic. So starting in early 2020, states were no longer allowed by the federal government to start redetermining eligibility. And so the Medicaid rolls just kept increasing and increasing with nobody being taken off. And as your viewers probably know, that Idaho has now started the redetermination process, and the rolls are starting to shrink. But if you look from 2020 until early 2023, there's been this giant escalation because you've had these two events of the expansion and the failure to remove ineligible beneficiaries. So that's really the problem. Now, as far as how managed care would play into this, healthy adults, or I should say, adults below 64, many or most of whom are healthy, are not going to be your biggest cost in terms of Medicaid beneficiaries. It's going to be the folks that are in nursing homes that are really the ones that are driving up the cost of the program, or developmentally disabled people who need daily attention. People who are sort of an average or above average health are not using medical care that much. So there's not really that much managed care can do to reduce their costs, and if anything, it's going to go the other way because they've got to cover that 12 to 15% nut that we talked about before.